Yo guys, always good. Welcome back on the Uncle Sharma channel here again. Today we are doing a player analysis video. I know the transfer window is over, but is it really ever over? And today the player that we're looking at is Davide Frattesi. And why are we looking at him? Because Beppe Marotta confirmed that Inter are interested in him, and the Sassuolo CEO confirmed that Inter are one of the first teams to make contact with Sassuolo to try sign Davide Frattesi. So he's definitely on the wish list. And before we get started, you guys make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. So who is Davide Frattesi? First of all, he is a 22 years old Italian central midfielder. He is 178 centimeters tall, or 5'8", and he weighs 74 kilograms, which you'd think that means that he's a small and skinny player, but actually he's pretty decent in terms of physique. And he was born in Rome. And he was brought up in both Rome teams, the youth teams. First he started off at Lazio, then went on to the Roma youth team, so he's got some cojones. After two excellent seasons in Serie B, first at Empoli, then at Monza last season, where he was actually in the Serie B team of the season and finished the season with 8 goals and 2 assists. He's now back in the Serie A, back at Sassuolo, his parent team, where he has been impressing teams from all around Italy and in Europe. All the big teams won him. This season he's put up 4 goals and 2 assists already for Sassuolo, has earned a call-up to the Azzurri team under Roberto Mancini, although he hasn't actually made his debut yet. And as I said, he's rumoured to be the #1 target, alongside his buddy old pal in the Sassuolo team, Gianni Scamacca, the guy who I made a video for, which make sure you check out if you haven't seen. Both of those guys are apparently the #1 targets for Inter this summer, and Marotta and Ausilio are earmarking Frattesi to be the perfect replacement or backup to Nicolo Barella in the Inter team. And for that reason, and I think a lot of other people have mentioned this as well, that the similarities to Barella, maybe we're going to try to compare his stats today to Nicolo Barella. First of all, tactically, where does he play? In the Sassuolo team, he plays in the 4-2-3-1/4-3-3 formation by Dionisi as the right centre midfielder, pretty much replacing Locatelli in the team. Locatelli was the mainstay in that Sassuolo team for the last 2 or 3 seasons. Obviously he was sold to Juve the last summer, and he came in and took over, but he's not a similar profile to Locatelli. He's actually quite a different profile, and I'm going to take a look at just by looking at his stats, but also some of the clips showing why he's so different. We'll get into his best attribute by far straight away, because it's an attribute that's quite hard to find in football in general, and it's an attribute that this Inter midfield needs, and in general other top midfields in Serie A do need. It's his goal scoring ability. The boy has this ability to make late runs into the box and score goals, simply put. And actually in this attribute he already outshines Barella. Barella is decent at this, but is not great at it. Frattesi is already showing at 22 years of age an innate talent of timing his runs perfectly, but also being eye school enough in front of goal to slot past the keeper. As we talked about it, this season already 4 goals. Last season in Serie B he had 8 goals. The guy is a goal scoring midfielder, and even though he's 5'8", he even manages to chip in with some headers because of the timing of his runs. And that's a skill that's hard to find in football. Someone that's able to read the game well, able to time his runs well into the box. And his shooting stats also stack up quite well, especially compared to Barella. He's got a good goals per minute ratio and good shooting numbers. Barella shoots a little more and from a little bit further out, but as I said, the guy seems to be a good finisher as well. Who has that in Inter midfield? No one really. I mean, Vecino was that type of player a few years ago. Gagliardini can do that, but more against the smaller teams. Barella himself has to improve on this aspect, so it is an attribute that is really needed in the Inter midfield. His other great attribute is his ball carrying ability, and this is an attribute that I've been banging on about for years, that Inter's midfield needs it, and Barella is the only one that kind of does this at a decent level. And Frattesi does this really well as well. He's able to use his body well to shield the ball, but then he has great acceleration to breeze past players with good close control. Scout stats actually say that he's one of the best midfielders this season in Serie A when it comes to dribbling completion rates at 65%. He attempts 2.98 per 90 minutes, and he's got an eye for a nutmeg, you know, and you guys know how much I like a nutmeg, so he's already selling me on that. He makes 1.96 accelerations per 90, which is not far off what Barella does. And he has one of the best offensive duel percentages in the league with 56% won out of 6.9 per game, which means, you know, he gets involved, gets stuck in, but wins a lot of the duels as well. Now, looking at his passing, this is where the question marks come up with Frattesi, and this is where, you know, I was saying that he's a different profile to Locatelli, because when you look at his passing stats, they don't look that great at all, and you can't use the excuse of Sassuolo being a bad team, or, you know, a team that doesn't keep the ball well, because Sassuolo, as you can see, they're one of the best teams in the league in terms of retaining possession. They're just below Inter. Locatelli last year was putting up some elite numbers when it comes to passing numbers, the progressive passes, ball carrying numbers. Whereas Frattesi, you know, you can see his passing numbers don't stack up too much. And of course, it has to be noted that Maxime Lopez, who is his partner in midfield, is the one that, you know, hogs the ball most of the time, so to say. He's the one who makes the most passes in the team, him and Gianmarco Ferrari, the centre back. But it still doesn't look quite right. And then when I've watched Sassuolo as well, and I've watched specifically to watch, you know, Frattesi and Scamacca and these boys, he does seem to sometimes shy away from the ball or not position himself well to receive the ball from his teammates. But also at the same time, as we've seen, you know, he gets into the box a lot, and I think the coach has given him clear instructions to kind of just assault the box rather than try to be a passing option in the build-up play. Especially when you compare the numbers to Barella, you know, as I said, you know, it's a heavy possession-based team, and he plays a similar position to Barella, as you can see in the heat map. You know, he's a little bit more central than Barella. Barella drifts out a little bit more, but he's not actually that involved in the passing. As you can see, Barella averages more than 20, almost around 20 more passes and touches than him per game. But this is not the be-all end-all, because technically he's a sound player, so I don't think the fact that it's not that he's not good enough in his passing, it just seems that he's not as involved as you'd like to think in the build-up play. But there's room for improvement there for sure. Now, defensively, his stats don't look great either, but again, you know, in heavily possession-based teams, the centre mids usually, you know, when you don't have that much defending to do, the defensive stats don't look that great. And, you know, compare them to Barella's defensive stats, they also don't look too great. But he's a guy who gets stuck in. He's in the top 10 midfielders this season in terms of interception, so, you know, he's got a good read of the game. But again, there's some room for improvement in that area. Overall, you can see why Inter's management won him. You can see why a lot of Interisti won him. He does remind you of Barella in some aspects, but I wouldn't really compare him as a straight up, you know, Barella regen or a Barella clone. But he looks like he could be the ideal Barella backup, or, you know, the guy to challenge Barella in that right centre mid spot for Inter. However, he's clearly not the finished article. There's still some things to improve on. Bringing him to Inter with Inzaghi, he can work, he can do his magic. So according to Transfermarkt at the moment, his value is £13.5 million. Which sounds about right. However, Sassuolo's reported asking price is around 25 million euros, which to me sounds a little bit steep for a guy who's just come up from the Serie B, hasn't been called up by the Italian national team yet. And if you compare it to Locatelli last year, who they sold for 35 to Juve for some, you know, some good terms for Juve, it doesn't really stack up to me. So I hope that Sassuolo are willing to play ball on this. And of course, it depends how Frattesi performs in the second half of the season. If he, you know, doubles his goal tally from 4 to 8, or, you know, Interisti, I'm just going to recommend you guys to just watch Sassuolo until the end of the season now. They're a fun team to watch. Scamacca, Frattesi, and also Raspadori, all of these guys are linked to Inter, so tune into Sassuolo games. But let's watch these guys closely and let's see how he performs until the end of the season. I think he is, you know, the right profile to bring in to replace Vecino and Vidal, who will be departing with expiring contracts at the end of the season. You reduce the average age of the team, you bring in young Italian prospective talent that will be, you know, part of the Italian national team going forward. Maybe he won't be a starter. I don't think he has that Barella level of ceiling, but, you know, we paid around 25 million for Gagliardini, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. So, you know, if it ends up being 25 million, it's not the end of the world. But I think, you know, probably close to 20 million for me sounds more of a fair price. But let's see, let's let Beppe and Ausilio cook. Let's see what happens. Maybe he won't end up at Inter, so maybe this video might be useful to other fans of other teams. But you know, let's see what happens. You guys let me know in the comments below, what is your opinion on Frattesi? What is your opinion on this video? Did I change your mind on Frattesi, or did I, you know, turn you off Frattesi? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you for the next player analysis video. Let me know who I should make the next player analysis video on. Ciao ragazzi, Forza Inter.